There was a wall that was built years ago. You've seen pictures of this wall. You know this wall. It is, without a doubt, the most amazing wall that has ever been built. You can even see it from space. So I'm talking about the Great Wall of China. But did you know that in the 100 years following its completion, China was invaded 3 times? And the invaders never came over the wall. Each time they had bribed those who manned the gates, and they walked through the wall. Our own political discourse these days involves security and walls. There's a discussion now on immigration. And part of the legislation that's before Congress now is providing for expanding the security fence that runs along the border with Mexico. In another high-profile case, we've all heard of Edward Snowden at this time, and he's raised the issue of our phone calls, but of computer security and computer firewalls. The old image that we have of a security precaution is kind of quaint. It's the old red phone, the hotline, that was supposed to go from Washington, from the White House to the Kremlin, so that in the case of high tensions, our leaders could connect instantly and diffuse a crisis. But I was reading about another hotline that was installed in 2003. The Department of Homeland Security wanted to, I don't know why it was focused on this state, but they wanted to have a hotline between the department and the office of then Governor John Hoeven of North Dakota. So they had the hotline installed, and in the first week of its hookup, the governor's office got these urgent calls from a pizza delivery service offering a 2-for-1 special for the governor. And the phone had to be reprogrammed to ensure only emergency calls came through. We continue in the 8th century as we go on with our sermon series involving the minor prophets. All the people in the 10 northern tribes in the northern kingdom and the people of the kingdom in the south of Judah around Jerusalem are all concerned about their security. And Micah recaps the situation. Now you are all walled around with a wall. Siege is laid against us. Things didn't look good. The dominant power is Assyria, which first threatened the northern kingdom and then would besiege Jerusalem. And it's in the midst of all this great insecurity, north and south, that the prophet Micah offers an oracle of hope. But you, O Bethlehem of Ephrathah, who are one of the little clans of Judah, from you shall come forth for me one who is to rule Israel. He shall stand and feed his flock in the strength of the Lord, and they shall live secure. For now he will be great to the ends of the earth, and he shall be one of peace. It's a prophecy of one who will come to rescue the people in the midst of a time of judgment because the people had been corrupt in their worshiping practices and they lacked concern about justice. It's a word of hope for all those people in the 8th century. But it's also a word of hope for those in generations to come. And it's a word about a Savior. Now, the gospel writer Matthew, when writing about the birth of Christ, would reach back into that text of Micah to capture those words of hope from that prophet. It's a further demonstration of how important the minor prophets were to the people of Israel. But the other thing that's striking about this text is the focus on Bethlehem, this little Bethlehem, which Micah says will be the source of this new king. So Micah is tapping into this old promise of the continuation of the kingship of the line of David. David, the shepherd king, who came from Bethlehem. But the use of Bethlehem is also remarkable because, as one scholar put it, Bethlehem was a one-camel town. It's a pretty insignificant place, geographically speaking. And the choice of a ruler from Bethlehem reflects God's penchant for reaching and using those among us who we might think are insignificant. People like a shepherd boy named David, or a younger son named Joseph, or an unwed girl named Mary. You might remember the beginning of John's gospel where Philip is telling Nathanael all about Jesus. And Nathanael asks, can anything good come out of Nazareth? It's the same kind of dynamic. So Bethlehem is like Peoria or like Hayes City, with apologies to people from central Illinois and western Kansas. But maybe you remember someone who otherwise would be deemed fairly unremarkable to the rest of the world, but maybe there is someone that you remember who did something or had an impact in your own faith journey somewhere in your life. Now, we don't live in the northern kingdom of Israel or the southern kingdom in the 8th century BC, but there may still be walls that are around us, that surround us and give us a sense of personally being under siege. Perhaps it's a medical condition. It might be your financial situation. It could be circumstances at school or at work or at home that leave you feeling hemmed in, surrounded with limited options. As a church, we may feel surrounded by challenges of a tight budget this year, of seeking to grow as a congregation, yet in a society where there are millions of things for people to do Monday through Saturday, and now all those things seem to spill over into Sunday morning too. Or as a country, we face challenges that might leave us feeling threatened or walled in, be it the potential of terrorism or stiff economic competition or environmental concerns. We certainly do need to do everything we can to respond to these personal or church-based or national or international concerns. But the words from the prophet Micah, delivered 29 centuries ago, still speak to us today. And in the midst of all that might surround us, we have a ruler, we have a king who cares for us like a shepherd. I drive up and down State Line Road pretty regularly, and there's a sign that has captivated me all through the summer. It's outside of a high school, and it changes every other day. And the sign lists two things. It lists the name of a graduating senior from the high school, and below their name it lists the college where they're going to be attending in the fall. It's a wonderful mix of past and present, of a salute, of a congratulations for an accomplishment of a high school graduation, but it also looks forward to the future, to the promise, to the hope of going off to college. And I think the Christian life is kind of like that. It's a blend of past and future. We have seen the coming of the Lord, and now we await the fulfillment of God's kingdom. And it's in our newborn King, in this risen Lord, that we have our ultimate hope and security. So the babe that Matthew talks about in chapter 2 of his gospel, of course, matures into the evangelist, to the one who will go and spread the good news. And in chapter 4, in a scene that we all know so well, Jesus is walking along the edge of the Sea of Galilee. And he comes across two sets of brothers, Simon and Andrew, and James and John, and he says to both pairs, "Follow me." And what did they do? They dropped their nets. But those nets that they dropped were their source of income. Those nets that they dropped were their entire livelihood. Those nets that they dropped were all their security. They dropped their safety nets, if you will. They dropped them in hope, and they dropped them in faith. In a few moments, you're going to be invited to step forward for communion. And as you do, I want to invite you to drop your nets. And if you don't mind my mixing metaphors, once you've dropped those nets, I want to invite you to look beyond those walls that are around you, that might be surrounding you. And I invite you to look to your security, to your salvation, to your hope in the mighty Lord from tiny little Bethlehem. Amen.